A rancher called his black cowgirl a liar for saying her father was a federal agent. He froze when that same agent stepped out of his truck wearing a vest. A federal agent? Seriously, Maria? Mr. Thompson scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain as it cut through the dry Texas air. That's the best lie you could come up with. He let out a cruel, barking laugh that echoed across the dusty corral. Maria stood her ground, her face a mask of stone, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Just then, the distant rumble of an engine grew louder. A dark, green government truck appeared on the horizon, kicking up a cloud of red dust as it barreled down the long dirt road toward them. Thompson's laughter died in his throat. If you believe in justice and that no one should be humiliated for who they are, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories, and comment with your city and the word justice below. You won't want to miss how this ends. Maria, 28 years old, was the best cowgirl at the Red Dust Ranch, and everyone knew it except the man who signed her paychecks. For 5 years, she had worked under the relentless West Texas sun, her hands calloused and her resolve hardened. She knew the land, the cattle, and the rhythm of the seasons better than anyone. She was respected by the other ranch hands, men who had initially underestimated her but had come to see her skill and unbreakable work ethic. Her boss, however, saw only what he wanted to see. The confrontation had started over something small, as it always did. A section of fence bordering federal land was down. It was a common problem caused by a recent storm, but Thompson needed someone to blame. "This is unacceptable, Maria," he had yelled, pointing a thick finger at the broken wire. "3 of my best cattle have wandered off toward the preserve. Do you know the kind of fines I'll face if they cross that line?" The other 2 ranch hands, Jake and Carlos, stood by silently, staring at their boots. They knew the fence was old and rotting, that Thompson had ignored their requests to replace it for months to save a few dollars. They knew it wasn't Maria's fault, but they also knew the cost of speaking up. "I'll ride out and get them back, Mr. Thompson," Maria said, her voice even. "I can have them back before sundown." "You better," Thompson snarled. "This is pure carelessness. You're supposed to be checking the fence lines daily." "I did," Maria stated calmly. "I reported this section needed repairs last week. It's in the log." Thompson's face turned a shade redder. He hated being contradicted, especially with facts. He decided to change tactics, to attack her instead of the problem. "You don't know anything about regulations or federal land. You just know how to follow orders." A flicker of defiance sparked in Maria's eyes. "I know the rules, sir. I know exactly what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service requires. My father taught me." Thompson laughed. "Your father? What would your father know about it? Does he run a little farm somewhere?" "No, sir," Maria said, her voice quiet but firm. "He's a senior officer with the Fish and Wildlife Service. He's been one for 30 years. That was when the dam of Thompson's contempt broke. He threw his head back and roared with laughter. "An FWS officer! Your father! Oh, that's rich. Listen to this, boys. Maria's father is a big, important federal man." Jake and Carlos shifted uncomfortably. They didn't join in the laughter. "You people will say anything, won't you?" Thompson sneered, stepping closer to her. "You think a fancy story makes you better than you are. People like you don't have fathers who are federal agents. They work in fields or factories, if they work at all." The insult hung in the hot, still air. It was raw and ugly. Maria's jaw clenched, but she held his gaze. Her silence was more powerful than any shout. She had her father's integrity, and she wouldn't let this man tarnish it. She knew the truth, and that was enough. That's when they heard it, the sound of the engine. Now, the green truck was pulling to a stop just a few yards away, the official government seal on its door glinting in the afternoon sun. The cloud of dust it had created began to settle, revealing the vehicle in stark detail. The engine cut out, plunging the scene into a sudden, tense silence, broken only by the buzzing of insects. Thompson stared, his mouth slightly agape. He recognized the truck. He'd seen them patrolling the borders of his property before, a constant annoyance. But they never came onto his land without a reason. The driver's side door opened. A tall, broad-shouldered black man in his late 50s stepped out. He was wearing the official khaki uniform and a ballistic vest with FWS emblazoned in bold yellow letters across the chest. He put on his wide-brimmed hat, adjusted the duty belt at his waist, and looked directly at the small group by the corral. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the scene before they locked onto Maria. A small, proud smile touched his lips for a fraction of a second. Then he turned his gaze to Mr. Thompson. The smile vanished. Thompson's face went pale. The arrogant, mocking rancher was gone, replaced by a man who looked like he'd just seen a ghost. He glanced from the federal officer to Maria, then back again, the horrifying realization dawning on him. This wasn't just about a broken fence anymore. This was about years of cutting corners, of dumping waste near the preserve, of letting his cattle overgraze on protected grounds. Thompson thought he was untouchable, but could the man stepping out of that truck be the one to bring his entire empire crumbling down? The man from the truck walked with a purpose that made the ground seem to harden under his boots. He didn't rush, but every step was deliberate, closing the distance between authority and arrogance. He stopped in front of Maria first, his stern expression softening for a moment. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You okay, honey?" he asked, his voice a low, calm rumble that was a stark contrast to Thompson's earlier shouting. "I'm fine, Dad," Maria replied, her voice steady. The simple exchange was a confirmation that shattered Thompson's world. It wasn't a lie. It was the truth, standing right in front of him in a government-issue vest. The officer, David Carter, then turned his full attention to the ranch owner. Thompson, who a minute ago had been a domineering bully, now seemed to shrink. He wiped a sweaty palm on his jeans and forced a sickly smile. "Officer Carter, is it?" Thompson stammered, extending a hand that David pointedly ignored. "Just a small issue with the fence here. My cowgirl was just explaining the situation." David's eyes were like chips of granite. "I was 100 yards out with my windows down, Mr. Thompson. I heard the explanation. I also heard you call my daughter a liar, and I heard what you said about people like us." The color drained from Thompson's face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Jake and Carlos took a simultaneous step backward, wanting no part of the fallout. They had seen Thompson berate and belittle Maria for years, but this was different. This was a reckoning. "My visit today isn't personal, though you're doing your best to make it so," David continued, his tone dropping to a professional, chilling monotone. "I'm here on official business. We received an anonymous tip 2 weeks ago about potential violations of the Endangered Species Act on this property, specifically concerning illegal dumping near the aquifer that feeds into the preserve." Thompson's eyes widened in panic. The fence was nothing. The cattle were nothing. The aquifer, that was everything. For years, he'd been saving money by having his crew dump used oil, old batteries and chemical runoff into a dry creek bed at the far end of his property. He thought no one would ever find out. "An anonymous tip," Thompson sputtered. "That's ridiculous. It's probably a disgruntled former employee. Lies, all of it." "We'll be the judge of that," David said, pulling a small, rugged tablet from a pouch on his belt. "This visit was already scheduled for today. Your little scene here just moved it up the priority list. I'm initiating a full site inspection. Right now." He looked past Thompson, toward the ranch house. "I'll need to see all of your permits, your waste disposal logs, and purchase records for all pesticides and chemicals for the last 5 years. He then looked back at the broken fence. "And while we're at it, let's talk about these 3 cows that have strayed onto federal land. That's a federal offense, Mr. Thompson. One that carries a hefty fine per animal per day. Maria," he said, turning to his daughter, "you mentioned a logbook where you reported this fence was in disrepair?" Maria nodded. "Yes, sir, in the main office." "She doesn't know what she's talking about," Thompson blurted out, his desperation growing. "She's just trying to cover for her own negligence." David held up a hand, silencing him. She said she logged it. We'll check the log. If the entry is there with a date from last week, then it's not negligence on her part. It's negligence on yours. Failure to maintain fencing bordering a national preserve is another serious violation. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. These things are starting to add up, Mr. Thompson. It's painting a picture of a man who cuts corners, who doesn't respect the law, and who doesn't respect his employees. David took a step closer, forcing Thompson to look him in the eye. My daughter has worked for you for 5 years. She's managed your herds, mended your fences, and worked through droughts and floods, and you have the audacity to stand here and humiliate her because you're too cheap to run your business properly and too prejudiced to see the person in front of you. He turned to Jake and Carlos. Either of you see Maria log that fence repair request last week? Jake and Carlos exchanged a nervous glance. This was their moment. They could stay silent, loyal to the man who paid them, or they could tell the truth for the woman who worked alongside them. After a tense second, Jake cleared his throat. Yes, sir, Jake said, his voice quiet but clear. I was there when she wrote it down. Last Tuesday. Carlos nodded in agreement. Me too. She showed it to Mr. Thompson. He said he'd get to it. Thompson looked at his 2 ranch hands with pure betrayal in his eyes. The last pillar of his authority had just crumbled. He was alone, exposed, and cornered by a federal officer who was not only doing his job, but was also defending his daughter's honor. All right, David said, his voice all business again. He tapped a few things on his tablet. I've just requested a support team. A biologist and a soil specialist will be here within the hour. They'll start by taking samples from that creek bed. While we wait, you can lead me to your office so I can review those logs you keep so meticulously. The sarcasm was a final sharp twist of the knife. Thompson stood frozen, his bravado gone, replaced by the cold, stark terror of a man who was about to lose everything. And it all started because he couldn't believe that a black cowgirl could have a father who was a federal agent. The walk to the ranch office was the longest 50 yards of Thompson's life. David walked beside him, a silent, imposing presence, while Maria followed a few paces behind. The air of authority had completely shifted. Thompson was no longer the king of his dusty castle. He was a prisoner being escorted through his own domain. He fumbled with the keys to the office door, his hands shaking so much it took him 3 tries to get the lock open. The office was small and cluttered, smelling of old paper and stale coffee. A thick layer of dust covered everything except the chair behind the large wooden desk. Thompson moved behind it, a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control, but it was useless. David remained standing, filling the room. The logbook, David said, his voice flat. Thompson started shuffling through messy piles of invoices and cattle auction flyers. I think Jake might have taken it out to the barn. We were checking inventory this morning. Maria stepped forward, her patience gone. She walked past Thompson, opened the top right drawer of his desk, and pulled out a thick leather-bound ledger. She placed it on the desk with a solid thud. It's always here, she said, looking directly at her boss. Always. Thompson flinched as if she'd slapped him. David opened the book. He didn't need Maria's help to find the entry. His finger traced down the page for last Tuesday until it stopped. There it was, in Maria's neat, clear handwriting. Section 4 fence, bordering preserve. Post rotted, wire snapped. Reported to T, urgent repair needed. Beside it, in Thompson's messy scrawl, was a single initial. T. He had seen it, he had acknowledged it, and he had done nothing. David took out his phone, clicked it on, and took several clear, high-resolution photos of the page. The sound of the digital shutter was like a hammer blow in the silent room. Well, that settles the matter of negligence, he said, closing the book. That's a $10,000 fine minimum. We'll add it to the tally. He gestured for Thompson to step away from the desk. Now, the permits and chemical purchase records. For the next 20 minutes, Thompson pulled out files, his hands still trembling. Most of his paperwork was a disaster. Permits were expired, records were incomplete, and the purchase orders for certain highly regulated pesticides were suspiciously missing. With every missing document, David made a quiet note on his tablet. He didn't need to raise his voice. His calm, methodical dismantling of Thompson's operation was far more terrifying. Finally, David looked up. "Wait outside, Mr. Thompson. I need to speak with my daughter." Thompson looked like he wanted to argue, to insist on staying in his own office, but one look at David's face told him it was a battle he couldn't win. He shuffled out the door, leaving it open, and stood on the porch, a defeated man watching his world unravel. David turned to Maria. "I have to ask again, are you okay?" "I am now," she said, a wave of relief washing over her. "Thank you for coming, Dad. I didn't call you. I didn't want you to." "I know," he said softly. "You wanted to handle it yourself. You've always been that way, stubborn, just like your mother." He smiled, a genuine, warm smile this time. "But you didn't have to handle this alone. Maria, this investigation didn't start today. The anonymous tip came in 2 weeks ago." Maria looked surprised. "From who?" "Jake," David revealed. "He approached one of my junior officers in town. He was worried. He said Thompson was getting more and more reckless, cutting corners everywhere. He was scared someone was going to get hurt, or the land was going to be permanently damaged. The illegal dumping was his biggest concern. He just didn't have concrete proof of where it was happening." It all clicked into place. Jake's quiet support, his decision to speak up. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment choice. It was the culmination of weeks of worry. "The confrontation today," David continued, "was just dumb luck on my part. I was scheduled to come out for an initial low-key survey. When I drove up and heard him yelling at you, well, the plan changed. Just then, the sound of another vehicle approaching cut through the air. A second FWS truck, this one more like a mobile lab, pulled up next to David's. 2 people got out. A woman with a determined look on her face, carrying a case of scientific equipment, and a younger man hauling what looked like soil sampling gear. David stepped out onto the porch, with Maria right behind him. "Dr. Evans, Mr. Chen, thanks for getting here so quickly." "No problem, David," Dr. Evans said, her eyes already scanning the property. "Where are we headed?" "The old creek bed, northeast corner of the property," David said. He looked over at Jake and Carlos, who were still standing by the corral. "Jake, can you show these folks where we need to go?" Jake nodded eagerly and started walking toward the specialists, ready to lead the way. The sight of the scientific team and their equipment was the final straw for Thompson. He rushed toward David, his face a mask of desperation. "Okay, Carter, listen," he said in a low, conspiratorial voice. "There's no need for all this. We're both reasonable men. A fine, I can pay a fine. Whatever it takes to make this go away, I can be very generous." David didn't even blink. He looked down at the desperate, sweating man in front of him. "Are you attempting to bribe a federal officer, Mr. Thompson?" Thompson's jaw snapped shut. He had just walked into the final, inescapable trap. "That's another felony to add to the list," David said, his voice as cold as a winter morning. He turned his back on Thompson and spoke to his team. "Let's get to work. I want soil and water samples from every 10 feet of that creek bed, full toxicology screen." As the team, led by Jake, headed off toward the far end of the ranch, Thompson could only stand there, frozen in place, watching the real work of his destruction begin. As the science team disappeared over a rise in the land, led by Jake, a tense silence fell over the main yard. Thompson stood on the porch, his face a mottled canvas of red and white. He was breathing heavily, his mind racing, trying to find an angle, an escape route, but there was none. His gaze fell on Carlos, who was still standing near the corral, trying to make himself invisible. The fear in his employee's eyes was the spark Thompson needed to reignite his rage. He couldn't attack the federal officer, but he could still assert his power over his own men. "You?" Thompson bellowed, pointing a shaking finger at Carlos. "You're fired. Get your things and get off my property. Now." Carlos stared, stunned. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't—" "You stood there and said nothing. You let him walk all over me." Thompson then turned his head and yelled in the direction Jake had gone. "And you tell that backstabbing friend of yours he's fired too. I want you both gone in an hour." David, who had been speaking quietly with Maria, turned around slowly. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were hard. "That's a bad idea, Thompson," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "This is my ranch. I can fire whoever I want." Thompson shot back, his voice cracking. "You can," David agreed, taking a step toward him. "But when you fire two men who just acted as witnesses against you in a federal investigation, it stops being a simple labor dispute. It's called witness tampering. It's a felony, and it's one that prosecutors take very, very seriously." He let the words hang in the air. "So, by all means, fire them. Make my case for me. Show everyone exactly what kind of man you are." Thompson's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a hook. He was trapped. Firing them would add years to his potential sentence. Keeping them on meant suffering the daily humiliation of seeing the men who had defied him. He had lost control completely. He spun around and stormed into his office, slamming the door so hard the glass in the window rattled. David walked over to Carlos. "Don't you worry," he said reassuringly. "He won't touch you. If he does, you call me directly. You and Jake are material witnesses now. You're protected." Carlos could only nod, a look of profound gratitude on his face. Maria watched the exchange, then turned to her father. "Dad, the creek bed is bad, but it's not the worst of it." David's attention snapped back to her. "What do you mean?" "About a year ago, he had a bunch of old barrels delivered. Said it was for cattle feed supplement," she explained, her voice low. "But they never went near the feed storage. He had me and Jake take them out to the north pasture, way back behind the old collapsed shed no one ever goes near. He told us to just leave them there. A few weeks later they were gone, but the ground, it's been dead ever since. Nothing grows there, not even weeds." David's face grew grim. This was the kind of detail that turned a case of illegal dumping into a major environmental crime. "Show me," he said. Maria nodded. "We'll need the truck. It's too rough for a car." Leaving Carlos to watch the office, David and Maria got into his FWS truck and drove, bouncing over the rugged terrain. Maria directed him along a barely there trail that wound its way through mesquite and prickly pear cactus. Finally, she pointed. There, behind that pile of rubble. The shed was a skeleton of rotting wood, collapsed in on itself years ago. Behind it was a clearing, a scar on the land about 30 feet wide. The earth was a sickly, dark color, and it was completely barren. Even the surrounding hardy desert plants seemed to recoil from the edges of the patch. The air here was different, carrying a faint, sharp chemical smell that stung the back of the throat. David got out of the truck and knelt down, running a gloved hand over the soil. It was oily and clumpy. He didn't even try to bury it, he murmured more to himself than to Maria. He just poured it right on the ground. He radioed Dr. Evans. "Helen, I need you and Chen at a new location. Maria's with me. She can give you directions. Bring the ground-penetrating radar." 20 minutes later, the science team arrived. As soon as Dr. Evans stepped into the clearing, her professional demeanor sharpened. "Oh, this is bad," she said, pulling a portable air quality monitor from her kit. The device started beeping almost immediately. "David, the volatile organic compounds here are through the roof. This is a hazardous site." Chen set up the radar equipment and began a slow, methodical scan of the clearing. They watched in silence as he moved back and forth, his eyes glued to the screen. After a few minutes, he stopped. "Got something," he said. "About 4 feet down. It's metal, large, cylindrical." David's jaw tightened. "Get the shovels." Meanwhile, back in his office, Thompson was frantically making a phone call. "Alan, it's Bill Thompson." "Yes, I'm fine, but I've got a problem. A big one. The FWS is here. They're tearing my ranch apart." "No, I didn't say anything. Well, there was a small misunderstanding. "Alan, I need you here. I need my lawyer, now." He listened for a moment, his face paling even further. "Well, what do you mean you're in court in Austin? Get someone else. Get your best guy. I don't care what it costs. Just get them down here before they put me in handcuffs." He slammed the phone down, his last hope a high-priced lawyer who was hours away. He stared out the window, watching the distant figures in the north pasture. He didn't know what they were doing, but he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that they were digging his grave. The digging was hard work. The ground was packed tight, baked solid by years of unrelenting sun. David and Chen took turns with the shovels, their movements efficient and rhythmic. Maria stood back, her arms crossed, watching the patch of dead earth give up its secret. The chemical smell grew stronger with every shovelful of dirt they tossed aside. After 10 minutes of grueling labor in the oppressive heat, Chen's shovel struck something with a dull, metallic thud that vibrated up the handle. "Here," he grunted, planting the shovel and leaning on it to catch his breath. David took over, digging carefully around the edges of the object. Soon, the curved, rusted top of a 55-gallon drum was exposed. It was old, the paint peeled off, but it was intact. As they cleared more dirt, they found it wasn't alone. There were 3 more barrels buried side by side in a shallow, unmarked grave. "He didn't just dump them," Maria said, her voice tight with anger. "He buried them. He knew exactly what he was hiding." "Let's get one open," David said, his face set like a mask. Using a crowbar from the truck, David and Chen worked together, leveraging the rusted lid of the first barrel. It resisted, groaning in protest, before finally popping open with a sickening squelch. A wave of noxious, sickly sweet odor washed over them, forcing them all to take a step back. Inside, the barrel was filled with a thick black sludge that bubbled slowly in the heat. Dr. Evans moved in cautiously, her professional curiosity overriding any sense of disgust. She held her portable analyzer over the open drum. The device whirred for a moment and then began to shriek, a high-pitched, insistent alarm. "Everybody back!" she commanded, her voice sharp. "Now!" She didn't have to tell them twice. She tapped at the screen of her device, her eyes wide. "David," she said, her voice strained. "The primary compound in here. It's a derivative of hexachloro-D. It's a hypertoxic industrial solvent. They used it for degreasing heavy machinery." David stared at her. "I've heard of it. Wasn't that stuff banned?" "Banned by the EPA in 1992, Dr. Evans confirmed, looking up from her screen with a grim expression. "It's a potent carcinogen. It doesn't break down in the soil. It seeps into groundwater and stays there for centuries. The cleanup for a spill like this is astronomical. We're not talking about fines anymore, David. This is a top-tier federal crime. This is EPA Superfund territory." The weight of her words settled over the clearing. This was no longer about a spiteful rancher cutting corners. Thompson had poisoned his own land and potentially the entire aquifer that supplied water to the preserve and the surrounding ranches for miles. The anonymous tip from Jake had been about dumping used motor oil, not chemical weapons-grade poison. David turned to Maria, his face etched with a new level of concern. "How long have you been working near this?" "I only came back here that one time, a year ago," she said, her mind racing. "But the cattle, they sometimes graze near here." A cold fury settled in David's gut. This wasn't just an attack on the environment. It was a direct threat to the health and livelihood of everyone in the area, including his own daughter. He pulled out his radio, his voice now devoid of any emotion, but ice-cold resolve. "This is Officer Carter," he said into the radio, his call going out to regional dispatch. "I have a Code 1 environmental emergency at the Red Dust Ranch. I am formally requesting immediate assistance from the EPA's regional hazmat team and the U.S. Marshals Service. We have uncovered multiple barrels of a banned hazardous substance. The site is not secure. I repeat, I need marshals on site, now." Back at the ranch house, Thompson was pacing his office like a caged animal when he saw the new vehicles arrive. It wasn't just another FWS truck. A sleek, black sedan with government plates pulled in first, followed by two large SUVs. Men in suits and tactical vests got out. They moved with a disciplined urgency that screamed high-level federal law enforcement. Just then, a dusty Lexus sped down the driveway and screeched to a halt. A man in an expensive but now wrinkled suit jumped out. Alan, Thompson's lawyer, had arrived. "Bill, what the hell is going on?" Alan demanded, rushing up the porch steps. "I broke every speed limit to get here. Who are these people?" "I don't know," Thompson cried, his voice hysterical. "It was just supposed to be about a broken fence. Now there are guys with guns." Before Alan could respond, David's truck came rolling back from the north pasture, pulling to a stop in front of the office. David got out, his face grim. He was followed by two U.S. Marshals, their hands resting near their sidearms. "William Thompson," David said, his voice booming across the yard, leaving no room for argument. "You are under arrest." "On what grounds?" the lawyer immediately interjected, stepping in front of his client. "My client has not been charged with anything." David looked past the lawyer, his eyes locked on Thompson. "For multiple violations of the Endangered Species Act. For failure to maintain property bordering a federal preserve. For illegal dumping of industrial waste. For attempting to bribe a federal officer. For witness tampering." He took a step closer, his voice dropping. "And for the illegal possession and disposal of banned hazardous materials, endangering a public waterway and aquifer." The lawyer's professional composure finally cracked. He turned to his client, his eyes wide with disbelief and horror. "Banned hazardous materials? Bill, what did you do?" Thompson just stared, his face ashen. The world had collapsed. The men who worked in fields, the people he had looked down on his entire life, had brought him to his knees. His final, pathetic act of defiance was to glare at Maria, who stood beside her father, her expression not of triumph, but of profound, weary justice. One of the marshals stepped forward, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back." The click of the steel cuffs locking around Thompson's wrists was the only sound in the yard. It was the sound of the end. The marshals led Thompson to the black sedan, his movements stiff and uncoordinated. He was a man hollowed out, the arrogance and bluster replaced by a vacant shock. As they pushed his head down to get him into the back seat, he seemed to wake up for one last venomous burst of defiance. He twisted his head, his eyes finding Maria across the yard. "You did this!" he screamed, his voice raw with hatred. "You and your people, you'll regret this. This is my land." The car door slammed shut, cutting him off. The sound was final. His lawyer, Alan, scrambled after them, trying to ask questions the marshals simply ignored. He was left standing in the dust as the sedan, followed by the two SUVs, pulled away, taking Bill Thompson out of his life and into the cold, unforgiving machinery of federal justice. Alan turned, his expensive suit now coated in a fine layer of red dust, his face a mixture of professional frustration and personal shock. He looked at David. "Officer Carter, my client, is on his way to a federal holding facility." David cut him off, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "He'll be arraigned tomorrow. Given the charges, especially the attempted bribery and witness tampering, he will not be getting bail. You can meet him there." "This entire ranch." "You can't just seize it," Alan protested weakly. "I'm not seizing it. The Environmental Protection Agency is," David corrected him. "As of my call 20 minutes ago, the Red Dust Ranch is an active federal crime scene and a designated hazardous materials site. No one enters or leaves without our authorization. All assets will be frozen pending the outcome of the investigation and trial. That includes the land, the equipment, and the cattle." Just as he spoke, more vehicles began to arrive. A large white truck with EP hazmat response on the side rumbled down the driveway, followed by a mobile command center. Men and women in white and yellow protective suits began to emerge, their movements calm and methodical as they started to unload equipment. The ranch was being transformed, sectioned off with yellow tape that looked jarringly bright against the muted browns of the landscape. Jake returned from the far side of the property, his face pale. He had seen the barrels. He walked over to where Maria and Carlos were standing, watching the controlled chaos unfold. I had no idea it was that bad, Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. I thought it was just oil, old chemicals from the shop. Not that. None of us did, Maria said. He played us all for fools. What happens now? Carlos asked, looking at the growing number of federal agents. To the ranch? To our jobs? It was a question Maria didn't have an answer to. For 5 years, this place had been her life. She had poured her sweat and skill into it, caring for the land and the animals far more than their owner ever did. Now it was a poisoned, cordoned-off piece of evidence. David walked over to the three of them, his official duties momentarily set aside. He put his hand on Maria's shoulder. The EPA will be here for weeks, maybe months. First, they have to contain the site to stop the chemicals from spreading further into the aquifer. Then comes the assessment, and then the cleanup. It's a long process. And the cattle? Maria asked, her concern for the animals overriding everything else. They'll be quarantined and tested, David explained. Any that are sick will have to be put down. The healthy ones will likely be sold at federal auction to help pay for the cleanup. He saw the look of pain on her face. I'm sorry, Maria. It's the ugly reality of what he's done. He looked at Jake and Carlos. You two will be contacted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. You'll need to give official statements. Your testimony is crucial. As for your jobs, legally, the ranch's assets are frozen. There's no one to write your paychecks. A cloud of despair settled over the two men. They had done the right thing, and their reward was unemployment. But Maria straightened up, her spine stiffening. She had been a victim for too long. No, she said, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the grim atmosphere. She looked at her father. There has to be another way. The cattle still need to be fed and watered. The healthy parts of the ranch still need to be managed. You can't just let it all die while the lawyers argue. David looked at his daughter, a flicker of immense pride in his eyes. He saw the leader she had become, forged in the heat and dust of this very place. You're right, he said. The government can appoint a temporary receiver to manage the property during the legal proceedings, to preserve the value of the assets. It's usually a lawyer or an accountant. He paused, a slow smile spreading across his face. But in a case like this, with a specialized asset like a working cattle ranch, they need someone who knows what they're doing, someone who knows the land and the animals. He looked directly at Maria. Someone like you. The idea hung in the air, audacious and perfect. Maria stared at him, her mind trying to process the sheer scale of what he was suggesting. Her, in charge? Me? She whispered. Who better? David said simply. You've been running this place in all but name for 5 years. Jake, Carlos, he said, turning to the two stunned ranch hands. Would you work for her? There was no hesitation. In a heartbeat, Jake said. Yes, sir, Carlos added with a firm nod. I'll make some calls, David said. I'll talk to the U.S. Attorney. I'll tell them they have a ranch manager on site who is also a key witness with an experienced crew ready to work under her. It's the most logical, cost-effective solution. He squeezed Maria's shoulder. He tried to take your dignity, honey. Now you're going to take his legacy. You're going to run his ranch, and you're going to do it right. Maria looked out over the property. She saw the flashing lights of the federal vehicles and the yellow tape. She saw the beginning of a long, hard road, but for the first time, she wasn't looking at it as Thompson's ranch. She was looking at it as her responsibility, her future. The ultimate justice wasn't just seeing him fall, it was seeing her rise to take his place. David stepped away from the group, his phone already to his ear. He spoke in a low, authoritative voice, pacing a short line in the dust. Maria, Jake, and Carlos watched him. the fate of the ranch and their futures being decided in a conversation they couldn't hear. The EPA teams continued their work in the background, a silent, efficient army cordoning off the poisoned land. Their presence a constant reminder of the scale of the disaster. After what felt like an eternity, David ended the call and walked back toward them. He had a look of grim satisfaction on his face. "I spoke with Assistant U.S. Attorney Hernandez," he announced. "She was skeptical at first, but when I laid out the facts that you know the land, you know the herd, and you're already on site, she saw the logic. She said it's unconventional, but these are unconventional circumstances." He looked at Maria, and his professional demeanor melted away, replaced by the simple pride of a father. "It's done. The paperwork will be expedited. As of tomorrow morning, you are the court-appointed federal receiver for the assets of the Red Dust Ranch, pending the outcome of the trial of United States versus William Thompson." The words were so official, so heavy, they seemed to hang in the air. Maria felt a wave of dizziness. Yesterday, she was a cowgirl being berated for a broken fence. Today, she was in charge of a federal crime scene that was also a working ranch. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Don't say anything," David advised. "Do. Start now. What's the first priority?" The question snapped her back into focus. He was testing her, but it was a test she'd been preparing for her whole life. "The animals," she said without hesitation. "The EPA has the contaminated zones locked down, but the rest of the herd needs water and feed. They're stressed." She turned to her crew, her voice finding a new, natural authority. "Jake, I need you to start a full check of the water troughs and pumps in the west and south pastures. Make sure they're full and clean. Carlos, you're with me. We need a complete inventory of the feed stores. We need to know exactly what we have." The men didn't blink, they just nodded. "Yes, ma'am," Jake said, already turning toward the utility vehicle. The ma'am felt strange but right. "Let's get to work," Carlos said, falling into step beside her as they walked toward the main barn. The first day was a blur of relentless work. While the EPA hazmat team took blood samples from the quarantined cattle, Maria, Jake, and Carlos worked from sunup to sundown, their familiar tasks now imbued with a new sense of purpose. They were no longer working for Thompson, they were working for the ranch itself, fighting to keep it alive. That evening, exhausted and covered in dust, Maria walked into the ranch office for the first time as its boss. The place still smelled of Thompson's cheap cigars and entitlement. Piles of junk mail and old magazines were stacked on every surface. It was the nerve center of his neglect. She opened a window to let the stale air out and sat down in his chair. It felt too big, wrong. She stood up again, unable to get comfortable. She decided to clean. She started with the desk, throwing away months of garbage. Under a pile of cattle auction catalogs, she found a stack of letters held together with a thick rubber band. They were all from banks and suppliers. She pulled off the rubber band and began to read. Her heart sank. They were all final notices. A letter from the bank threatening foreclosure on the property due to 3 months of missed mortgage payments. A notice from the feed supplier cutting off their credit and demanding immediate payment of a $50,000 overdue bill. A warning from the electric co-op that service would be disconnected in 10 days. Thompson hadn't just been poisoning the land, he'd been running it into the ground financially. He was broke, or close to it. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She had inherited a sinking ship. Her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number with a Washington, D.C. area code. She answered hesitantly. "Is this Maria Carter?" A crisp, professional voice asked. "Yes, it is. Ms. Carter, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney Hernandez. I'm the lead prosecutor on the Thompson case. I just wanted to officially welcome you to your new role as federal receiver." "Thank you, Ms. Hernandez," Maria said, her hand tightening on the foreclosure notice. "Your father speaks very highly of you." the attorney continued. Your duties are to maintain the assets of the ranch. A federal account has been established, funded by Mr. Thompson's frozen assets. Your salary and that of your 2 approved employees will be paid from this account, along with all necessary operating expenses. I'm sending you the official documentation now. You'll need to submit weekly expense reports. Operating expenses, Maria repeated slowly. Ms. Hernandez, I've just found a stack of overdue bills. The ranch is on the verge of foreclosure. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'm not surprised, Hernandez said, her voice tight. His finances are a mess. Send copies of everything you find to my office. The court can authorize payment of legitimate outstanding debts from the frozen assets to prevent the dissolution of the property. It will be your job to sort through what's critical and what's not. It seems your new job just got a lot harder. I understand, Maria said, her voice more resolute than she felt. After the call ended, she stood in the dark office, the pile of threatening letters on the desk in front of her. The weight of it all, the poison, the debt, the responsibility, threatened to crush her. But then she thought of Thompson's sneering face, his cruel laughter. She thought of his final hateful scream. He expected her to fail. He expected people like her to be unequal to the task. A fire ignited in her chest, burning away the fear and exhaustion. She would not fail. She would save this ranch not just from Thompson's poison, but from his incompetence. She would scrub every trace of him from this land. This was her ranch now, and she would fight for it. 3 months passed. The relentless Texas sun beat down on the Red Dust Ranch, but something was different. The change wasn't in the weather, but in the land itself. Under Maria's relentless management, the ranch was slowly breathing again. The broken fence that had started it all was now a sturdy line of new cedar posts and taut wire stretching for miles. The water troughs, once choked with algae, were clean and full. The cattle that had passed the EPA's rigorous testing looked healthier, their coats shinier. The ranch was still a federal crime scene, with the northern pasture and the creek bed cordoned off behind intimidating chain-link fences and warning signs, but the living parts of it were thriving. Maria had changed too. She still spent her mornings in the saddle, her hands calloused and her jeans dusty, but her afternoons were spent in the office she had scrubbed clean of Thompson's presence. She was no longer just a cowgirl. She was a manager, a bookkeeper, and a logistician. She learned to navigate the labyrinth of federal bureaucracy, submitting detailed weekly reports to AUSA Hernandez's office. She spent hours on the phone, not with other ranchers, but with bankers and suppliers, renegotiating the debts Thompson had left behind. Armed with the authority of the federal court and a will of iron, she had pulled the ranch back from the brink of financial collapse, one authorized payment at a time. She, Jake, and Carlos had fallen into a new rhythm. They worked harder than ever before, but the oppressive weight of Thompson's presence was gone. There was no more casual cruelty, no more belittling remarks. There was only the work and the shared goal of keeping the ranch alive. They were a team, united by circumstance and mutual respect. One sweltering afternoon, a government sedan pulled up to the office. AUSA Hernandez stepped out, her dark business suit looking out of place against the dusty backdrop. She was there for a final pre-trial meeting. They sat in the now organized office, a file thick with documents on the desk between them. The case against Thompson is overwhelming, Maria, Hernandez said, her tone direct and all business. The evidence from the EPA is damning. The lab reports on those soil samples are a prosecutor's dream. We have financial records showing he was paid a substantial sum by an industrial cleaning company in Houston 6 weeks before you saw those barrels. They paid him to make their problem disappear, and he buried it in your backyard. So he'll go to jail, Maria said. It wasn't a question. For a very long time, Hernandez confirmed, but his lawyer knows he can't win on the facts. So he's going to attack the witnesses. He's going to attack you. Maria felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. What do you mean? Thompson's official defense is that this is all a fabrication. His lawyer, Alan, is going to paint a picture of you as a disgruntled employee who was angry about being passed over for a promotion. He'll claim you conspired with Jake to plant the evidence and invent the story about the dumping because you wanted to get rid of Thompson and take over the ranch. The accusation was so absurd, so twisted, that Maria could only stare. But that's insane. The EPA found the barrels. Your father... Facts don't always matter to a jury as much as a story does, Hernandez cautioned. They will bring up every time you and Thompson argued. They'll twist your ambition and your competence into a motive for revenge. They will try to make you look like a liar. They will bring up your race, your gender, anything they can use to poison the jury against you. You need to be prepared for it. When you're on that stand, they are going to come at you with everything they have. She slid a document across the desk. It was a witness list. Maria's name was at the top, followed by Jake's and Carlos's. You three are the heart of our case, Hernandez said. The physical evidence is strong, but you provide the context. You provide the human story of his negligence, his greed, and his character. The jury needs to hear it from you. After Hernandez left, Maria stood on the porch, watching the dust from the car settle. The victory she had felt over the past 3 months suddenly felt fragile. It wasn't just about the ranch anymore. It was about her word, her integrity against a rich man's lies. That evening, her father came to visit. He didn't come in his official truck, but in his personal one, not as an FWS officer, but as a dad. He found her sitting on the top rail of the corral fence, staring out at the sunset. Hernandez told me she came by, he said, leaning on the fence next to her. She said they're going to call me a liar, Maria said, her voice flat. David was silent for a long moment. When you were a little girl, you fell off your first pony, broke your arm. You cried all the way to the hospital, he said, his voice a low rumble. The next morning, with your arm in a big cast, you were back out here trying to climb back on that same pony. You were terrified, but you did it anyway. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a lifetime of love and respect. This is no different. You're scared, that's fine. But you know the truth. Thompson's lawyer is paid to create doubt. That's his job. Your job is to just stand there, look those 12 people in the eye, and tell them what happened. Tell them what he did to the land and what he said to you. The truth has a weight to it, Maria. They'll feel it. His words settled her nerves. He was right. She had faced down Thompson when he had all the power. She could certainly face down his lawyer in a courtroom. The next few weeks were spent in a state of tense anticipation. Life on the ranch continued. Calves were born, fences were mended, and the EPA's cleanup crew became a familiar sight on the horizon. But beneath the surface of daily chores, the upcoming trial loomed. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Maria was in the middle of negotiating a new and much fairer feed contract. It was Hernandez. It's time, the prosecutor said. The trial starts next Monday. You're my first witness. The federal courtroom was a cold, impersonal space of polished wood and muted colors. It felt a universe away from the sun-baked earth of the ranch. Maria sat at the witness stand, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She wore clean jeans, her best boots, and a simple pressed button-down shirt. She was a rancher in a lawyer's world, and she refused to pretend to be anything else. Across the room, at the defendant's table, sat Bill Thompson. He had lost weight, and his expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. The arrogant, ruddy complexion was gone, replaced by a gray, sallow look. But the venom in his eyes was still there. Every time he looked at her, it was with a pure, undiluted hatred. AUSA Hernandez began her direct examination. Her questions were simple, designed to let Maria tell the story in her own words. Ms. Carter, please describe the events of the morning of June 12th. Maria's voice was steady as she recounted the argument over the broken fence. She didn't embellish or add emotion. She just stated the facts. She described Thompson's escalating anger, his refusal to accept responsibility for the rotting posts she had logged the week before. "And what did he say when you mentioned your father could clarify the federal regulations?" Hernandez asked. "He laughed," Maria said, her gaze unwavering. "He said, 'What would your father know about it?' He asked if he ran a little farm somewhere. And what happened after you told him your father was a senior officer with the Fish and Wildlife Service?" "He laughed harder," Maria recalled. "He told Jake and Carlos that I was making up a fancy story. Then he looked at me and said, 'You people will say anything, won't you? People like you don't have fathers who are federal agents. They work in fields or factories if they work at all.'" Quiet murmur went through the courtroom. Hernandez let the ugly words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. Maria went on to describe her father's arrival, Thompson's immediate change in demeanor, and the subsequent discovery of the logbook entry that proved her truthfulness. She was calm, clear, and unshakable. Then it was the defense's turn. Alan, Thompson's lawyer, approached the stand with a predatory smile. "Ms. Carter," he began, his voice smooth as silk. "You've worked hard your whole life, haven't you? You're an ambitious woman." "I work hard, yes," Maria replied. "And you were the best ranch hand Mr. Thompson had, weren't you? In your opinion, at least." "I knew the job," Maria said simply. "So it must have bothered you, working for a man you clearly felt was incompetent, a man who didn't appreciate your talents." "I did my job," Maria repeated. The lawyer circled the stand. "Isn't it true, Ms. Carter, that as of this moment you are the court-appointed receiver for the Red Dust Ranch? You are, for all intents and purposes, running Mr. Thompson's entire operation." "I am managing the assets for the court, yes," she corrected him. "What a remarkable turn of events," Alan exclaimed, turning to the jury. "One day, you're a humble cowgirl. The next, after a convenient argument and a surprise visit from your federal agent father, you're the boss. It's quite the promotion, isn't it?" "It's a responsibility," Maria said, her voice tight. Alan leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Let's talk about that argument. Mr. Thompson claims you were insubordinate, that you refused a direct order to fix the fence and instead chose to argue with him. Is that true?" "No, sir. I told him I would retrieve the cattle and that the fence had been reported as needing repair. So it was just a disagreement, a heated exchange between a boss and an employee. He called me a liar and insulted my family. Or perhaps he questioned a story that on its face sounded a little convenient," the lawyer shot back. "Isn't it the truth, Ms. Carter, that you were tired of working for him? That you saw his financial troubles and his legal troubles with the fence as an opportunity to get him out of the way so you could finally have what you believed you deserved?" He straightened up, his voice ringing through the silent courtroom. "Isn't it true that you and your father conspired to use his position to frame Mr. Thompson, planting those barrels on his property to ensure he would be removed, leaving the ranch wide open for you to take over?" The accusation was a physical blow. Maria felt the blood drain from her face. This was exactly what Hernandez had warned her about. She could feel Thompson's smug glare from across the room. She took a deep breath, remembering her father's words. The truth has a weight to it. She didn't look at the lawyer. She turned her head and looked directly at the 12 faces in the jury box. "No, sir," she said, her voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. "That is not the truth." She paused, holding their gaze. "For 5 years, I gave everything I had to that ranch. I was the first one up in the morning and the last one to bed. I doctored sick calves in the middle of the night and mended fences in 100-degree heat. This was never about his ranch. It was about respect. I never asked for a promotion. I never asked for more money. I just wanted to be treated like a capable human being. But Mr. Thompson couldn't do that. When he looked at me, he didn't see a person who knew his land better than he did. He saw a stereotype. He saw someone he thought he could bully and belittle. The day my father arrived, the only thing that changed was that Mr. Thompson's prejudice ran head first into the truth. She finally turned her gaze back to the stunned lawyer. A man like that doesn't need to be framed, sir. You just have to stand back and give him enough rope. He will hang himself every time. A dead silence fell over the courtroom. Alan, the slick, confident lawyer, had no response. He just stood there, his mouth slightly open. Hernandez sat back down at the prosecution's table, a small, satisfied smile on her face. Across the room, Thompson was no longer glaring. He had sunk into his chair, the venom in his eyes replaced by the hollow look of a man who knew he had just been buried. The truth, as her father had said, had a weight to it, and it had just crushed William Thompson. Maria stepped down from the witness stand, her legs feeling steadier than she expected. She walked back to the hard bench in the gallery and sat beside her father, who simply reached over and squeezed her hand. He didn't need to say a word. The rest of the trial moved quickly, almost like an afterthought. Maria's testimony had sucked all the air out of the defense's strategy. Jake was called next. His testimony was short, simple, and honest. He confirmed Maria's logbook entry and recounted Thompson's dismissive attitude. When Alan tried to paint him as a co-conspirator, Jake just looked confused. "Sir, I just didn't want the cattle to get sick. Maria's a good boss. She knows what she's doing." The use of the present tense, "is a good boss," wasn't lost on the jury. Then came Dr. Evans from the EPA. She was the prosecution's hammer. On a large screen, she displayed satellite images of the ranch, showing the dead zone in the north pasture growing over time. She showed the jury photos of the rusted, sludge-filled barrels. She presented complex chemical analysis charts that she broke down into terrifyingly simple terms. The level of hexachloro-D found in the soil is 500 times the acceptable limit for hazardous waste, she stated, her voice devoid of emotion. It has already contaminated the upper levels of the aquifer. The estimated cost for a full cleanup will be between $8 and $10 million, and it will take a decade. Thompson's lawyer didn't even have a question for her. The closing arguments were a formality. Alan made a weak, rambling speech about reasonable doubt and the character of a hard-working rancher being assassinated by disgruntled employees. It was a speech he didn't seem to believe himself. Then Hernandez stood up. She was brief and brutal. "William Thompson had a choice," she said, pointing a finger at the defendant's table. "He chose to take money to poison the land. He chose to lie about it. He chose to intimidate his employees. And when he was caught, he chose to bribe a federal officer. But his most revealing choice was what he did on the morning of June 12th. When confronted with the truth by a competent, hard-working black woman, he chose to mock her. He chose to humiliate her. He chose to rely on old, ugly prejudices because he believed they were his right. He believed she was nothing. And that is why he sits here today. Because he underestimated the truth. And he underestimated Maria Carter. The jury was out for 45 minutes. When they filed back in, their faces were grim and set. The foreman, a man who looked like a high school football coach, handed the verdict form to the bailiff. He couldn't look at Thompson. The judge read the verdict. On the charge of illegal disposal of hazardous materials, we, the jury, find the defendant, William Thompson, guilty. A quiet gasp went through the courtroom. On the charge of witness tampering, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of attempting to bribe a federal officer, we find the defendant guilty. The word guilty echoed through the room, a drumbeat of justice on all 11 counts. Thompson didn't move. He just stared at the polished table in front of him, a man completely and utterly broken. The sentencing happened 2 weeks later. The judge was merciless. "Mr. Thompson," he said, looking down from the bench, his voice cold. "You have not only broken the law, you have betrayed the trust that comes with owning a piece of this land. You have endangered your neighbors, the wildlife, and future generations for a few $1,000s. Your actions were driven by a toxic combination of greed and arrogance. This court finds no mitigating circumstances. He sentenced Thompson to 25 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole. He imposed the maximum possible fines and ordered the full forfeiture of all his assets to the federal government to begin paying for the EPA cleanup he had caused. As the marshals led him away in handcuffs for the last time, Thompson was a ghost, not even a shadow of the tyrant who had ruled the Red Dust Ranch. A month later, Maria was on horseback, surveying the west pasture as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. The ranch felt peaceful for the first time. Her phone rang. It was AUSA Hernandez. "Maria, I have news," the prosecutor said. "The forfeiture is complete. The ranch is now officially the property of the United States government." "What does that mean for us?" Maria asked, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. "It means your job as receiver is almost over. The government's primary interest is recouping the massive cost of the cleanup. They've ordered a federal asset auction. The ranch, the land, the equipment, the remaining herd, it's all going up for sale in 60 days. The words hit Maria with the force of a physical blow. She had saved this place. She had nursed it back to health. She had poured her own soul into this dirt, only for it to be sold off to the highest bidder. It could be bought by a corporation, a developer, anyone. I see," she said, her voice hollow. "I'm sorry, Maria," Hernandez said, her professional tone softening. "You've done an incredible job. The U.S. Attorney's Office will give you the highest possible recommendation for any future work. You've earned it." Maria ended the call and looked out at the land stretching before her. Her land. It felt like hers. The thought of leaving it, of letting some stranger take it over, was unbearable. This was more than a job. It was her home. Her father's words from months ago came back to her. "He tried to take your dignity, honey. Now you're going to take his legacy." She had done that. She had run his ranch, and she had run it right. But the final act of justice, the ultimate victory, was still out of reach. Vengeance wasn't just seeing him in prison. It was making sure his legacy of poison and prejudice was erased forever, replaced by something new, something she would build. A new resolve hardened in her eyes. The fight wasn't over. It had just entered its final round. Maria didn't spend the next 60 days packing her bags. She spent them in the office, under the single glow of a desk lamp, long after Jake and Carlos had gone home. She wasn't just managing a ranch anymore. She was planning a war. She made phone calls. She studied federal land acquisition programs, conservation easements, and EPA remediation grants. She read every line of the reports Dr. Evans had filed, learning the exact chemical composition of the poison in her soil. She wasn't just a rancher. She had become an expert on the very disaster that threatened to take her home away. 2 weeks before the auction, she called Jake and Carlos into the office. She had a large map of the ranch spread across the desk, with the contaminated zones marked in red. "The government is selling the whole ranch," she told them, her voice steady. "We can't afford it. No regular person can." The men's faces fell. "So, that's it then?" Jake asked quietly. "No," Maria said, a fierce light in her eyes. "That's not it." She pointed to the red zones on the map. "This is our problem, but it's also our solution. No sane rancher wants to buy a property with a multi-million-dollar EPA cleanup site attached to it. It's a liability. But you know who is interested in damaged land that borders a national preserve?" She let the question hang in the air. Carlos's eyes widened. "The government." "Exactly," Maria confirmed. "The Department of the Interior. The Fish and Wildlife Service. They have programs to acquire buffer zones around their preserves, especially land that needs environmental restoration." She laid out her plan. It was audacious, born of desperation and brilliance. She had spent the last month on the phone with bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., using the contacts AUSA Hernandez had reluctantly provided. She had drafted a formal proposal, The plan was simple: convince the federal government to partition the sale. They would transfer the two contaminated zones, the poison pasture and the creek bed, to the Department of the Interior to be managed as a long-term conservation and reclamation project. This would remove the toxic liability from the auction. The remaining healthy part of the ranch, the pastures, the house, the barns, would then be auctioned off separately at a much, much lower price. "It's a long shot," she admitted. "It's a mountain of red tape, but I think it's the only shot we have." The day of the auction arrived. It wasn't held on the ranch, but in a sterile, air-conditioned government building in Austin. Maria sat in the front row, her father on one side, Jake and Carlos right behind her. She had her life savings, a pre-approved high-interest loan from a small agricultural bank that was betting on her character, and a heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. The auctioneer, a fast-talking man in a suit, stepped up to the podium. "All right, folks, next up is Lot 7B, the assets of the former Red Dust Ranch. As per the amended sale order, this lot consists of approximately 4,500 acres of viable pasture land, the main residence, barns, and all associated equipment. The contaminated zones designated as Lot 7A have been transferred to the Department of the Interior and are not part of this sale." A murmur went through the room. The big corporate bidders, who had been expecting a massive land grab, began flipping through their files, their expressions souring. The value proposition had just changed. The bidding started. The corporate lawyers made a few half-hearted attempts, but their interest was in volume, and a smaller partitioned ranch wasn't worth a bidding war. The price climbed, but slowly. Soon it was just Maria against one other man, a wealthy-looking rancher from a neighboring county. The price hit the absolute limit of her loan. The auctioneer raised his gavel. Going once. Maria felt a wave of nausea. She had come so far, only to fail at the final hurdle. Going twice. Then, from the back of the room, her father's voice, calm and steady, called out, "Another 5,000. Maria whipped her head around. He looked at her and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. He was using his retirement savings. It was everything he had. The other rancher shook his head and threw his hands up in defeat. "Sold!" the auctioneer cried, his gavel cracking down like a gunshot. "To Ms. Maria Carter and Associates." 1 year later, a new hand-carved wooden sign stood at the entrance to the long dirt driveway. It didn't say Red Dust Ranch. It said Carter & Co. Ranching. The ranch was hers. The EPA cleanup was still ongoing behind the chain-link fences, a project now managed and funded by a different branch of the government. But the rest of the land was thriving. The herd was growing, and the books, for the first time in over a decade, were in the black. Jake and Carlos were no longer just ranch hands. They were foremen and partners, their futures tied to the success of the land they had helped save. David Carter stood on the porch with his daughter, watching the sunset. He was retired now, his FWS vest hanging in a closet. "Thompson's legacy is a 25-year prison sentence and a $10 million toxic cleanup bill," he said, his voice content. Maria looked out at the healthy cattle grazing in the distance, at the new fences, at the home she had fought for and won. "He's gone, Dad. That's all that matters." "No," David said, putting an arm around her shoulder. "It's more than that. You didn't just take his legacy. You erased it. You replaced it with your own." Maria leaned against her father's shoulder, a feeling of deep, hard-won peace settling over her. The setting sun cast long shadows across the land, shadows that felt clean and new, untainted by the past. The rhythmic creak of the porch swing was the only sound, a gentle counterpoint to the chirping of crickets. "You know," she said quietly, "for the longest time, I thought this was all about him, about proving him wrong, about getting revenge for the way he treated me, the way he looked at me." "That's a powerful motivator," David said, his voice a low rumble. "It is," she agreed. "But standing here now, it feels different. It's not about him anymore. He's just a bad memory, like a long drought or a cattle sickness. He's a problem we solved. What this is about now is this. She gestured with her free hand toward the sprawling pastures. It's about the land. It's about building something that lasts, something that's honest. She turned to look at him, her eyes shining in the twilight. And it's about you, Dad. What you did at that auction. You bet everything on me. There was never any gamble, Maria, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I knew what I was investing in. I've known it since you were a little girl in pigtails trying to rope a fence post. I invested in the surest thing I've ever known. A comfortable silence fell between them as the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon, leaving the sky a deep, bruised purple. The porch light flickered on, casting a warm, golden glow. From the bunkhouse, they could hear the faint sound of Jake and Carlos laughing. It was the sound of a home, of a family forged not by blood, but by shared struggle and mutual respect. Maria thought back to that horrible morning, to Thompson's sneering face and his cruel, dismissive words. He had tried to make her feel small, to make her feel like she was nothing more than what he saw, a black woman who didn't know her place. He had no idea that he wasn't just insulting her, he was insulting a long line of resilient, unbreakable people. He was insulting her father, a man who had dedicated his life to the law and the land. He had insulted her ancestors, who had worked land that was not their own, with a strength he could never comprehend. And now she stood as the owner of this land, a testament to the fact that character is not determined by prejudice, but by action. Dignity isn't given, it's earned. And justice sometimes isn't just about punishment, it's about restoration. It's about taking a poisoned piece of ground and a toxic legacy, and through sheer force of will, making it clean and whole again. She had taken his hate and turned it into her home. That was the ultimate vengeance. The story of Maria Carter shows us that the truth has a power and a weight all its own. In the face of arrogance and prejudice, her quiet integrity became a force that brought an empire of lies crashing down. She stood her ground, spoke her truth, and in the end didn't just win a battle, she reclaimed a future. What did you think of Maria's incredible journey from humiliated cowgirl to the proud owner of her own ranch? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for joining us for this emotional story of justice and vindication. If you were moved by Maria's strength and her father's unwavering support, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story. And if you believe in the power of truth, comment, "I watched until the end," to show your support. We love hearing from you. Click on the video on your screen now for another story that will touch your heart. We'll see you there.